Hello everyone, my name is Essence, and my presentation will be on medical social work. So let's go ahead and get started. So for an introduction to medical social work, medical social workers or medical social work can also be known as healthcare social work or healthcare social workers. And basically they help patients and their families cope with illnesses. So the main role of medical social workers is to assist patients with understanding their illness/condition and providing them with the necessary information about the resources available to help them cope with the emotional, social, and financial needs that arise with this medical diagnosis. So for an example, say someone were to get diagnosed with cancer. The medical social worker's job at that point would be to help that cancer patient understand their illness, to cope with their diagnosis of cancer, and giving them resources on how to deal with it and how to go about it. Medical social workers are also, I would like to say, like the biggest advocates. I like to say the biggest cheerleaders, because they're very adamant and very there about advocating for their patients, making sure that they're treated with dignity and respect and care and compassion. They also want to ensure that the patient's emotional and social needs are met throughout their medical treatment. The reason why I chose medical social work is because actually I have chronic pain myself. I have chronic illness. I have 2 chronic illnesses. I have fibromyalgia, and I also have, which is a chronic pain disorder, and I also have dysautonomia, which is a nervous system condition. So it would have been nice for me to have a medical social worker by my side to help me cope with that diagnosis and that illness, and giving me the resources on how to go about life and how to transition my life because of these new changes. I didn't have that. I didn't even know they existed for the longest time, so that would have helped me a lot with my learning my new diagnosis, and it would still help me to this day learn how to cope with it. As far as skills that medical social workers need, social work in general is a very broad field, but you have to have compassion to be in this field. You can't be in this field having apathy. It's just not going to work. And medical social workers need strong clinical assessment skills. They also need compassionate communication and the ability to respond effectively in crises while supporting patients and their families through the challenging medical situations that they're going through. Why I like to stress compassion and empathy a lot, because you're going to be dealing with a diverse population of people in general. So it's always important to extend that grace and to hold that space and hold that love for people, just like you'd want to be done for you if you were going through something similar. Also, medical social workers, they have to have a deep understanding of the healthcare system, insurance processes, community resources, and they can help coordinate. So they basically that they can coordinate care, plan safe discharges, and connect patients with needed support. Advocacy, cultural humility, and trauma-informed practice are essential for ensuring equitable and respectful care, while clear documentation and ethical decision-making help guide their professional skills in their professional role. Because the work of social work is a great field, but it's also very emotionally damaging, sometimes and emotionally draining. It's important to have boundaries, of course, resilience, and self-care to remain effective in a fast-paced, and high-stress environment. The skills that I have developed so far, I have a lot of empathy for people. I'm a very sensitive person, which can be a blessing and a curse in disguise at sometimes. But having that empathy and having those strong communication skills really help, because it's important for the job. I would say things that I do need to work on, I would say would probably be clinical assessment skills. I can struggle with that sometimes with clinical things or just assessing things in general. I can work on that. As far as what's prepared me for the medical social work field, I do think that my current job has prepared me a lot, because I am a BHT, a behavioral health technician, and it's not a group home at all, but it's transitional sober living. So I'm working with individuals, specifically Indigenous folks, who are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. So I deal with crisis every day and trauma every day. So I do think that that's preparing me to help with the patients I will have in the future, dealing with the residents that I do have in my job. There are some requirements to be a medical social worker. You do have to complete a bachelor's degree first in social work, sociology, or psychology. But to be a medical social worker in general, you have to have a master's in social work, and you have to complete 900 hours in medical social work internship. Medical social workers will also need to obtain a license in the state that they practice in. So licensing requirements depend on the state that you're in. and it typically includes a minimum amount of supervised work experience as well. The occupational outlook for medical social work is like the starting pay is typically around, it generally falls in the $40,000 to $60,000 range annually, with junior or entry level positions starting on the lower end around $37,000 to $47,000 depending on where you live. There is higher pay in major cities in states such as California or New York, because those are very expensive states to live in. In Phoenix, Arizona, though, I did search that. The average salary is around $75,000 a year, or $36 to $37 an hour for general social work. The starting pay, or on the lower end of things, the lower spectrum of things, you might find yourself entry level, like working around $58,000 a year or $28 an hour. Going more into the occupational outlook, the job growth and demand is actually looking very great for social work in general, medical social work in general, because it's faster than average. Social work, including medical social work, is projected to grow faster than other occupations. Why is it projected to grow faster? Is because of the aging population. A major driver in the growing elderly population is needing long-term care, housing support like assisted living, and health services. Healthcare social workers, often called medical social workers, specifically see strong growth with projections around 9 to 10% or higher from 2022 to 2032. Typically, as a medical social worker as well, you'll be working in diverse settings such as hospitals, clinics, mental health facilities, government, and private practices as well. And there is room for advancement as well. With experience, you can move up to supervisory roles, management, or even director roles. As a medical social worker, you'll be working with a diverse population in general. You'll be working with people such as, like, a wide range of people such as adolescents, children, adults, older adults who are navigating medical illnesses, injuries, or chronic conditions. This includes people facing acute medical crises, individuals with chronic or life-limiting diseases, patients in rehabilitation, and those receiving palliative or hospice care. So this is important because you have to have that cultural competency and cultural humility and just that scope of range of people, because you'll be working with a very, very diverse population of people. And also, medical social workers work with like underserved and vulnerable populations such as individuals experiencing poverty, homelessness, mental health or substance use disorders, domestic violence, access to health care. There are some challenges with being a medical social worker. There are typically some institutional challenges that can impact your ability to provide holistic and patient-centered care. Number one, the biggest one for me would be high caseloads and time pressure. Social work in general can be a very high turnover field, but because of the fact that there's a high caseload, and oftentimes you're giving off more than you can chew, so it can be difficult. I would say also number two, limited resources and funding. Number three, role confusion and under-recognition. Social work as a whole in general is very under-recognized and undervalued. Social workers, in my opinion, don't make enough for what they do. You're doing a lot, you're expending a lot of yourself to make not a lot of money, and it can just be difficult at times. Also, the challenges continue to be structural barriers within the healthcare system, such as like institutional policies, short hospital stays, insurance restrictions, or reimbursement limitations. It can conflict the social worker with their goal of providing comprehensive and patient-centered support. Number five would be emotional labor and secondary trauma. So working with extremely medically fragile, grieving, or traumatized patients exposes the social worker to an array of emotional strain and emotional trauma and emotional trauma. And without that institutional support, such as clinical supervision or wellness resources, that can lead to burnout or also lead to compassion fatigue as well. Number six, inequities embedded in healthcare institutions. Systemic issues such as like discrimination, language barriers, lack of culturally responsive care, and inequitable access to treatment place social workers in the challenging position of navigating injustices while advocating for structural change within institutions that may resist it. And that is all I have for my presentation today. I do want to say thank you so much to everyone in the class. I've learned a lot from you all this semester. I really appreciate it. And a thank you to our instructor and our TAs who helped a lot. I do apologize for my speaking fast. I do speak fast at times when I get a little bit nervous, but I do want to say thank you so much, and I did enjoy this presentation. So you have a great day.